I made a Punta Cana tipping video a while back, and in some of the comments, some people would say, well, my culture doesn't tip, or my country doesn't tip. We don't believe in it. So therefore, when I go to Punta Cana, I'm not going to tip. Every country and culture has their own set of norms and customs, and you should adopt to them when you visit. In Japan, you bow. In America, you shake hands. And in some countries, you hug and kiss when you meet someone. Tipping is very much a part of the Mexican culture. It's just not an American thing or a Western thing that we do when we come here. Mexicans tip each other, whether it's deliveries, haircuts, or when they go out to eat and drink. So when you come to Cancun, you should absolutely tip. Not only is it the appropriate thing to do, I think it's the kind and generous thing to do. That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. When you come to Cancun, when should you tip? Where should you tip? Who should you tip? So two quick things before I dive into this video. Number one, tip in dollars. Tipping in your native currency isn't going to help unless it's the dollar. Dollars are very widespread here. I'd say 90% of people are tipping in dollars. So try to get them ahead of time. You can get them here out of an ATM or through a currency exchange, but you're going to pay a premium for that. And number two, the amounts that I give you here, they might seem low, especially if you're from a country with a high standard of living. You need to remember the standard of living in Mexico is lower. These amounts are more than fair. I would say they're on the very, very generous side of the fair spectrum. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into it. I'm mainly going to focus on tipping at hotels. I think that's the biggest part of Cancun, going to these all-inclusive, staying at a hotel. But I may throw in a few other scenarios as well. And actually, I think that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the airport taxi. Now, the taxis in Cancun work a little differently than the ones in London or New York. In London and New York, the taxi drivers are kind of more independent contractors. Here in Cancun, they kind of work for the company. They're kind of more salaried. They're not as tip reliant as they would be in the places I mentioned. So from a percentage wise, you don't have to tip as much as you would say in London or New York, but you still should tip. Now, from the airport to somewhere in Cancun, and again, I'm talking Cancun, I'm not talking Playa, I'm not talking to Tulum. From the airport to somewhere in Cancun, that might run you between $50 and $70. A very fair, generous tip is going to be $5. If you want to tip a little bit more than that, you can, but $5 is more than fair from a taxi ride from the airport to your hotel. Now, if you're just taking a taxi around the hotel zone, if you're just jumping from place to place, maybe going to dinner, maybe going to a club, a fare is going to cost you maybe $13, $15, max $20. A good tip there is going to be $2 or $3. And I know it doesn't seem like much, but trust me, it is more than fair. Now, once you get to your hotel, this is interesting because you are going to be greeted by 5 different people. Someone's going to open the door for you in your taxi and greet you. Someone's going to take your bags. Someone's going to walk you to the front desk. The front desk person's going to check you in. And then someone's going to walk you to your room, and then your bags are going to be delivered. Something like that. If you tip all those people like I did at first, you're going to run out of money very quickly. The person to tip is the person who actually delivers your bags. I like to tip $2 per bag, no more than $10 total. Okay, this next one is a big one. It's drinks. What do you tip for drinks? I like to tip $1 a drink. Anytime I order a drink, I tip $1. That could be at a swim-up bar. That could be at a lobby lounge. That could even be a coffee in the morning. Whenever I get a drink, I tip $1. If I order 2 coffees, I'm tipping $2. There is another alternative method to this one. It's not one that I do or agree with, and that is front-loading the tip. Some people, when they know they're going to be maybe at a swim-up bar all day or a lobby bar all night, they'll front-load a tip. They'll pay initially $5, $10, $20. And that is to get the bartender's attention and to ensure awesome service all night. It's not something I like to do because a lot of times the bartenders rotate, they might switch shifts, and sometimes because these bars are so busy, they can kind of forget who gave what. I like the $1 a drink method. When you get a drink, you give $1, get a drink, give $1. All of a sudden the bartenders start to realize, hey, every time I give this guy a drink, I'm going to get $1. They pay really good attention to you, and you get great service. For room service, I like to tip $1 a dish. If I order 2 dishes, I tip $2, $4, 4 dishes. I do have a threshold of $5 though, no more than 5, no matter how many dishes I order. All right, for housekeeping, I like to tip $3 a day. That's definitely on the generous side of fair. I don't even need a lot of attention or service. I'm very self-sufficient. My room is always clean and organized, even without housekeeping. But I do tip $3 a day. If your room is trashed or if you really need a lot of help cleaning it up, you may want to pay a little extra. And then when I go to dinner, it's important to remember that these people are salaried. They're not as tip reliant as they would be in America, where most waiters are so heavily dependent upon tips. At a nice sit down, upscale place at an all-inclusive, I'm tipping $5. That's going to be sufficient for, I'd say, 1, 2, maybe even 3 people. If you're with a larger group, you may want to consider more, maybe up to $10. And then sometimes you will find yourself in a really, really nice all-inclusive restaurant where you're going to have multiple servers and multiple people waiting on you. In that situation, I am going to tip more than $5. I usually like to tip 7 or 10 just to kind of spread the wealth a little bit. So that's for a nice sit-down dinner, but what about just like a casual one, maybe a buffet or a restaurant that isn't as formal? $2 or $3 is going to be more than fair. Typically, the service at these kind of places are more casual, so you don't need to tip as much. So $2 or $3 for like a buffet or more of a casual restaurant. And you also may end up in a lounge. They have Diamond Club lounges and Preferred Club lounges. The upscale portions of these properties at these all-inclusives. There really isn't much service there, right? They might clean up your plate or bring you a drink, but it's real minimal service. I still do like to leave something, and when I do, it's typically $1 or $2. At some of these nicer all-inclusives, you may be assigned a butler. Now, it's not as personalized or luxurious as what you're going to find at a St. Regis. It's definitely more generic, but they are there to help support you and your stay. They can coordinate restaurant reservations. They can send housekeeping to your room. They can help you navigate the property. They are pretty much your personal contact and concierge. Now, I'm not very needy. I'm very independent. I rarely use my butler at all, but I still do like to leave a nice tip at the end of my stay. After 4 days, I usually tip $20. If you're there for longer and you utilize your butler more, you could maybe tip more than that. But I hear these stories of people tipping their butler $50 or $100. And unless they're with you 24/7, personally pouring your champagne, that is just egregious. At the end of approximately a week's stay, $20 to your butler is more than enough. I like to tip all of it at the end. Some people like to front load the tip or split the tip, maybe give $10 before or $10 after, or maybe tip all of it right away. I like to tip at the end. I like to see how hard the butler's going to work for me. I like to take a look at the personality, and I just like to pay attention to their attitude and how quickly they respond to my needs. On some occasions, I have received tremendous butler service, and I have bumped that up to $30 and even $40 at some times, but that is absolutely an anomaly. A few more quick but important ones. There is the MiniBar person, the person who comes and restocks your MiniBar, the refreshments every single day. It's important to leave this tip separate so they don't get confused with the housekeeping tip. I usually like to put it on top of the refrigerator. $2 a day for the MiniBar person. I have had occasions where they knock on the door and they load me up. Like multiple waters, a week worth of waters, a week worth of beer and alcohol. If they really hook me up and give me a favor, I'll tip about $5, but $2 a day is what you want to tip your MiniBar person. And then other than that, you're just going to find some random scenarios. You got to use your best judgment based on the amounts I've given you here. An example is one time at Majestic Elegance, the entire pool area ran out of towels. Someone went to the main lobby just to get them for me. I think I tipped them $2 or $3. Another time, a taxi was hard to get, and the taxi stand guy did me a favor. If you're not sure, $2 to a staff member is usually going to be a very appropriate tip. You can always tip more if you like, but if you want to know what a really good, decent, fair tip is, those are the amounts I've given you. So remember, these tipping amounts are for all-inclusive hotels. If you go to a non-all-inclusive hotel, you may have to change your tipping style. Lastly, very quickly, I want to talk about leaving your hotel. If you go out to eat or drink at a nice restaurant or just somewhere in general, what should you tip? In America, we like to tip 15% for good service and then 20% for excellent service. But in Mexico, that is way too much. If you do go to a dinner, 10% is what they are expecting. 10% is a really good tip on top of a dinner or some drinks when you go out. If you're feeling super, super generous, you could tip 15%. But the 15 to 20% that we like to tip in America is just not applicable here. 10% is going to be very appreciated and well received. 15 is really, really high, and 20 is insane.